So, who doesn't want to hear about the pyramids? Well, we do. Paul and I do here at Once Upon a Quantum Leap. We, by popular demand, have been urged to talk about the pyramids. So, we're going to dive into it as best we can, leave you wondering, as we always do. But we're going to talk about principles of levitation. We're going to talk about how many years the research is telling us that it took to build the pyramids. Sons of Belial, Sons of the Law of One, the King's Chamber, and maybe possibly the idea that there was a crystal on top of the pyramid at one point. Paul, what more?
Oh, yeah. Stay tuned for the story of the pyramid.
Exciting.
So, Kapazine,
So,
we have
Paul, yes.
we have a wonderful guest on this episode. It is a giant pyramid.
Oh, come on.
No, really.
How'd you
We have it
manage to
here in the
schedule this
studio
one?
with us. Now, we had so much feedback from all of our fans, our crazy raving fans. They said they kept on saying, "When are you guys gonna do an episode on the Great Pyramid?" And so we are finally relenting and giving in to that pressure from our fans. And
Yeah,
we're going to talk about pyramids
reluctantly, because we don't
reluctantly.
really want to talk about the pyramids.
Oh no, but they
All right,
insisted.
we
Yeah,
will.
yeah. All three of our fans,
I know.
including the one on the ceiling right here.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. All
Well,
right. So yeah, we got to talk about
we're going
the
to talk about it. And we're also we both have interests in the pyramid, but for different reasons, but all eventually still the same reason, right? So
yeah
my reason of being curious, interested, and wondering about the pyramids is how does it connect to all stories of creation? Our history is humanity. How are they connected to the universe? Like I'm always expanding it to tell me how these wonderful structures, what on earth do they have to tell us about who we are as a human race and how we are connected to something larger than that? If they do tell us that, but I think they do. That's my interest in the pyramids.
yeah, like the story behind the pyramids. And
Mhm.
I little by little, I became obsessed with the technology of the pyramid and the theories of how they were built and what they were built for and how they worked and the physics of what's going on with these things. So I've read a bunch. And it just so happens that the intuitive reports from various sources pieced together both of these things, pieced together the story behind and the consciousness behind the pyramids, and as well as some of the technology
Mhm.
was revealed and expressed. So we can
So
dive
let's
into
we can
intuitive
dive into that.
research and the pyramids.
So
Yeah.
I'm always curious how some of that information can still help weed out, sift through some of what the intuitive research is telling us, and how much of it hopefully will point us into another direction that maybe, folks that have had this anthropological and archaeological interest from a scientific perspective may then hear some of this information and say, huh,
Yeah, and I
I
think that's all we really want
that's it.
is just the door opening to maybe let's take a look down that hallway
Yeah.
and let's see.
Tell me your story. Like
Well, actually,
what
when I was 13, I went to the ARE out in Virginia and
the
met Hugh
ARE.
Lynn Case, ARE, Association for Research and Enlightenment. That was Edgar Casey's foundation after he died. This was formed. Actually, I think it was formed before he died, but yeah, there's a place that houses all of his reports, all of the intuitive research that he did that came through him, and it's this marvelous place, well-preserved records. I was out there when I was 13 years old, way back, and
You went with your
um,
family? Your parents obviously
yeah,
took you?
my
Really?
mom and I took a trip out there in our VW van,
Mm.
and she knew I was really into Edgar Casey stuff, And man, the first thing I did was I went straight for the notebooks. Back in those days, they didn't have computers or anything was digitized. It was just folders. It was just notebooks with reports, and they were classified up on these shelves based on topics. So you could pull something off that had to do with herbs or something that had to do with past lives. And I went straight for the Atlantean and the Egyptian folders and uh, and pyramid folders and pulled those off and was just devouring those. What stayed with me was that there through Edgar Casey there was a pretty clear explanation of when the pyramids were built and how they were built and why they were built. Well, not so much how. It was when and why and who. Um, and that really stayed with me. And then after that, there have been some books that were compiled from these readings that Casey did, and really good um, compilation stories that they pulled all of those reports and they put them together. And then along the way, we have the School of Metaphysics reports that corroborated all of this stuff about the pyramids, about how old they are, also the Sphinx. And so the story goes that about 10,800 BC, so that's about 12,000-ish years ago, maybe even 13 now.
Mm-hmm.
I got to do my math backwards. But 6 or so BC, we know that there was a cataclysm that happened on the planet. That's pretty well established. Uh, that there were either asteroids or meteors, there were earthquakes, there were volcanoes, there was a mini ice age that happened. All of that is well established in the archaeological record. And that also happened to be, according to the intuitive reports, the end of Atlantis. That's when it blew up, sank, um, tidal waves, floods,
Hmm.
volcanic eruptions, all kinds of trauma for humanity. All of this stuff was happening in the Atlantic Ocean and over in West Africa and West Europe. Um, so
So yeah, I'm trying to visualize that. So there
that's
was
about when they said the pyramids were built,
hmm,
right?
right
Like
when
during
that
this cataclysmic period.
okay.
And the attempt was to stabilize the planet because they were well aware that the planet was in this giant flux, both magnetic flux and environmental atmospheric flux. And at those at that time, we can also piece together that there were these hmm, there was anomalies that they say in the atmosphere. And we can kind of piece together from the intuitive reports. They didn't really spell it out technically, but they said that the sun was behaving differently at that time, and therefore our atmosphere behaved differently at that time.
Okay.
And so there's speculations that either the moisture content of the atmosphere was different, or the magnetics was very different, or something was going on with the atmosphere that was very different that also allowed um, interesting properties down here on the surface of the planet,
Hmm.
like magnetic properties that were just different back then.
I'm going to bring that word back, cycles. So
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
talked about cycles in previous episodes. So again, it's hard to use the word timeline, but we will a little bit, and then we'll revert back to the word cycle.
yeah.
So by that time, a cycle of the Egyptian period started, which ended
Yeah,
Atlantis. Is that
that's a
how?
really good point to bring up. There's there's an interesting break in the intuitive reports. There's a point where before 10,800 or so, let's say 11,000 BC. Before 11,000 BC, the reports refer to somebody's past life as this was in fourth cycle, or this was in third cycle, or second cycle, or first cycle. And after 11,000 BC, they talk in terms of years.
Oh,
They don't
okay.
say cycles. So it's a very clear delineation between cycles, and
Oh,
now we talk about years. I think that corresponds with our consciousness, where um, entrapment was pretty well completed humanity wide at that point, at 11,000. You look at the
so
picture of Atlantis sinking, and there's this picture of land being submerged, this this fluid consciousness, connected consciousness, and we talked about this in another episode too. Consciousness is now submerged under the water, and the in the poetic language of mind, that says that subconscious mind is now in the background. It is now no longer prominent. It is now subservient to the conscious mind, and the conscious mind is now the most prominent, or the most forward aspect of our of consciousness playing out here on this plane. That's an example of this story of consciousness on this planet evolving. And that's the story that is just marvelous, really cool, and also not um, it's not taken into account in archaeology or even anthropology.
yeah, because I mean,
Anthropology typically will look at cultures rising and falling, and tool making, and how the development of skills and the development of civilization, but it won't really necessarily look at the development of consciousness.
right, and that's a big, because that's
It's
another.
pretty slippery. Yeah.
It will, but I really obviously I did some of my. That was one of my dissertation topics was consciousness
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a way of learning. But I think we will keep talking about consciousness in another way because it's a big topic even now in the whole, you know,
It's
zeitgeist
become
here,
mainstream. Yeah.
become
Yeah.
mainstream. And so there's a lot of good information out, but I think these intuitive reports and the research is going to tell us yet again something else that maybe some people haven't considered. And that's a really good point, is
Hmm.
that because you've used the word entrapment, and that entrapment, you described that really well about when subconscious mind kind of receded back and the conscious mind became
More
the focal.
prominent, more, yeah. Yeah. It's a it's a tricky little concept to wrap your head around, so to speak. Oh, there's a good pun. And it has to do with what part of the mind is more active, more, mm, where is your identity? And I think, before 11,000 BC, we identified more as spirit being, or connected beings, or fluid emanations from spirit and from creator. But there was a shift in how we identified ourselves. And it culminated right about 11,000 BC.
Fascinating. And what does that have to do with pyramids?
Well,
Right? I mean, right?
yeah,
Isn't
really.
it, this is,
Oh yeah, pyramids. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. So this cataclysm that happened about that time, um, yes, it had to do with consciousness, but it also had to do with the stability of the Earth and the planet. And there were those that could foresee that things were really unstable on this planet, and they had been for a long time. Um, Gradually settling down, but there were, as we know, there's these plate tectonics that things are shifting and subducting, and mountain ranges coming and going. And they had just enough visionaries in Atlantis and in Egypt that could tell that this was going to happen. This cataclysm was going to happen. Atlantis was going to sink. They were trying to get everybody relocated, but it didn't quite work out that way.
So when you say
But in the
they,
meantime, they tried to stabilize the planet
so when you
by
say they tried to
they
stay.
the
Who's the they?
visionary leaders of Atlantis.
And they are who? Who are the
Good,
visionary leaders?
good question. Um, Supposedly they were called, in their language, they were called the Sons of the Law of One.
Mhm.
That's a nifty name, but the Law of One had to do with this principle of we are one emanation from one source. And gradually we started believing that we're separate little fractured pieces of this one emanation of the source. And then we started believing that we are just these little splinters and individual pieces and forgot the connection to the one source. So that was the progression. That's what we would call these cycles of consciousness slowly becoming and steadily becoming entrapped in individual separate ideas of ourselves, identities. It's an illusion, yes, and most people delving into consciousness would say, yeah, we've kind of tricked ourselves into thinking we're not connected with the source, but no, we still are. We're not even connected. Like we are emanations of source, but we've tricked ourselves over centuries, millennia, into thinking that we're separate.
I know. I'm going to keep us jumping, but
Hmm.
we are going to, I promise, another episode that will come is we
We'll
will go
have
a little
to,
bit
yeah,
deeper into the source because that's another word that gets thrown around a lot.
yeah.
We're going to talk about the source and the sons of the law of one. So
Okay.
it's so yeah, I mean, a lot of my biblical and just the archives that we have in forms of the Bible, just specifically the Bible.
Yeah.
It talks a lot about God or the voice of God or heaven separated and the dome
Hmm.
of the water, I mean,
The
there's
firmament and yeah, yeah,
a lot of terminology around that.
yeah.
And again, I think those just making connections with just some of the physical, not physical, but the current historical research that we have that we rely on that tells us origin stories, like the Bible is one of them.
Hmm.
There are other
Oh yeah, every
there
major
are other holy texts
culture has an
that are
origin
around.
story. Sure.
But there's little snippets of some of those little stories that tell us a little bit more in their own language
Yeah.
that are all about the source and the sons of the law of one. So
Yeah.
just keep that as a bigger overview. Know that we will
Hmm.
come back to
We'll
that.
invite them as guests. Yeah.
We'll
We'll
invite them
invite
as guests too.
the
That's
law of one
we're talking
sons.
about
Yes.
the pyramids right now, but they're all
Yeah.
connected. This is why all these
It
little
is.
pieces are
Yeah. It
connected.
is all connected.
So I just wanted to make sure we came back to that, Paul. So go for it. Keep
Yeah.
going.
Well, these pyramids were constructed. Um, it sounds like from the reports again, sounds like it took about 100 years to build the Great Pyramid, and it was built as a stabilizer. We don't quite know what the technology is because the reports are very guarded. I think it's pretty smart move on the intuitive reports, uh, that the source of the intuitive reports say, I don't, in effect, they're saying, I don't think you guys are ready to handle the technology just yet of how these things were built and what these things were for, because collectively we kind of blew it back then. The apparently the pyramid was an energy collector, resonator, and propagator, and it collected um, atmospheric magnetism, converted it into some kind of energy that then could be broadcast and used by
Huh.
the people at the time.
For what purpose do you, what does the research tell us about that?
As far as we can tell, it had to do with operating some kind of machines,
Hmm.
operating either flying machines, traveling machines, lifting machines. Apparently, somehow, it can generate an energy that counteracts gravitation,
All right, so
force of
let's back
gravity.
up here, Paul, because
I
that's
know.
pretty crazy.
This is going in the deep end here.
No, 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 but this is why
I know.
we
I didn't
invited the
make this
pyramid.
stuff up.
We
This is
invited
not
the
just,
pyramid so
yeah.
the pyramid could say a little bit more about this.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so help me
Yeah.
understand that in another way. So it took about 100 years for the pyramids to be built.
Yeah.
And the purpose of building it was
Hmm.
to stabilize
Stabilize the land mass.
the
Yeah.
land mass, and that land mass is obviously planet Earth
Hmm.
or land mass, because we also
I'm
have other,
thinking it was more local than that. It might have been the entire Earth to stabilize the resonance and the movement of the plate tectonics of the Earth.
because there were also other structures that were being built
Yeah. And there were other
in
pyramids
different.
on other lands
That's
built
right.
as well.
And were they being built during that same time period?
I think so. Some were before and some were after. And some have been submerged,
But
obviously, with Atlantis as well.
all within this 100-year time cycle.
They might have been before that.
Okay.
There's not really any mention of, but there was mention that there were other pyramids that were built to stabilize the planet.
Okay.
And we've got this collection, small collection of pyramids, in Central America and over in Egypt. And there might be some hidden that we haven't even discovered yet, under some mountains that look like, huh, that's a pyramid shaped mountain there.
So
It
why a
might,
pyramid and why the shape of what's the geometrics behind that helps stabilize?
yeah, that's one of the mysteries that it
Mhm.
does not reveal the the nuts and bolts of the technology. It did say the reports did say that there was a crystal on top. Not, and a lot of archaeologists they speculate that there was just gold on the top because the Egyptians were really into gold.
What do you mean on
But
the top? Like on the very top point?
yeah, apparently there was some kind of crystal, like a giant, very particularly shaped crystal on the top that would gather cosmic rays or cosmic um, something emanating from either the sun or stars or both and focalize it and transfer it down into what we'd call the king's chamber below,
Mhm.
which had um, a very unique structure in it that looks like a resonator, looks like a capacitor, and it was used as a capacitor. It has been shown to um, transfer magnetic and electromagnetic energy really well. But apparently there was a giant crystal. There's
Hmm.
no record of it, of course, except in the intuitive research, in the
Huh.
intuitive reports.
Mm-hmm.
And the story goes that some faction that rose up against the Sons of Law of One took control of the pyramid and destroyed it. They
Wow.
destroyed the crystal somehow.
Now tell me what you think that means.
I think symbolically that and figuratively that shows the rise of the ego. So you look at the picture, the global, the poetic figurative picture of Atlantis submerging, the waters rising, the waters taking precedence. So the conscious mind is now in charge. And at the same time, the ego or the battle between, they call it the Sons of Belial, were the faction that rose up, and they fought against and rebelled against the Sons of the Law of One, and they won. And so the ego and the conscious mind are now the victors temporarily. Were the victors there, and that pyramid was destroyed in the process. That energy distributor.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's
and
like
then
a
we're
pre
left with this shell of a pyramid
Yeah, that Sons
after.
of Belial and the Sons of the Law of One. That reminds me of the precursor to the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
right?
very
Right.
similar. Yes.
Very
Yeah, I
similar
know what
because
you
then
mean. Yeah.
as you go forward.
Dhritarashtra, yeah, the blind king Dhritarashtra. And
Hmm.
he has to send his Pandu princes forward to do the actual battle. And he says, report back to me because I can't be there and I can't see what's going on.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that's interesting because I think I've only heard of the crystals, but not as specifically as you just said it just now, that crystal at the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
So you're right. There would be again, why I think it's important to look at the pyramids not just as physical structures,
Hmm.
but how they actually do mirror the human development of consciousness
Yeah.
and and the and the separation between the inner levels of mind, subconscious
Yeah.
mind, superconscious mind.
Casey's reports said that the actual journey, as like if you go into the pyramid, as you go in, the actual journey through the pyramid mirrors the evolution of consciousness. It's like it's encoded in the journey through the pyramid as you enter and go into the king's chamber and queen's chamber.
Now, this would be a good point to
That's
tell
fascinating.
everyone that you and I have not been
I have not
to the
this lifetime.
pyramids. No,
Yeah.
yeah, not this lifetime. But the intuitive reports are, they coincide with a lot of what different people have said when they've experienced that. You
Hmm.
know, different individuals have reported that there is something within that king's chamber that they do experience
Yeah.
something. I mean, everyone knows
Someday I'm gonna make it out there and
that would be.
yeah, watch me go out there and I'll just go, huh, I think this actually was a tomb. No.
It's possible.
No, no.
Everything's possible. But you're saying it's not a tomb.
Yeah.
Research, right? The reports,
Yeah, and that's the official archaeological explanation is, yeah, yeah, it was a tomb. Come on, you guys, it was a tomb. And the evidence of that is pretty scanty, very scanty. There was never any mummy or sarcophagus or nothing found in
mhm,
any of the pyramids
mhm,
of Giza. And there's no hieroglyphics in any of the pyramids. There's nothing. There's one, they call it graffiti. There's one set of graffiti way up in the king's chamber that says Khufu is great, something like that to the effect. And you can just imagine some punk broke into the pyramid, got all the way in there and wrote in hastily written words, Khufu is great. And then hightailed it out of there, told
mm,
his friends
yeah.
on a dare. I don't know, but that's my theory.
Well, so
That's not
describe this
from the
visual
intuitive
again.
reports.
So the king's chamber. So let's imagine this, the pyramid, the structure of the pyramid,
Hmm.
the very top, possibly based on the research that there's a crystal
Giant crystal.
and
I
it
imagine the
and
giant crystal shaped like the outside is shaped, which is like a nonahedron. I think that's the name for it.
mhm,
It's not actually a four-sided pyramid with a base. It's more like an eight-sided
eight-sided.
pyramid with a
Mhm.
base. Yeah. And
And
then
then
inside, you've got, if you looked at it from the side, you'd have, we need graphics for this show. You've got a shaft that goes up, a ramp that goes up. You've got one that goes kind of sideways, and then you've got another trail that goes down
it
into the
goes down.
basement of the pyramid.
Mhm,
I call it the basement, but yeah, yeah, down in the very bottom. And then there's connecting shafts that go in between them. There were some really interesting theories about it being a ram pump at one point, where you can pump water through this thing. It's like a circulation system all the way
mhm.
through this beast. Um, and of course, they've tested the electromagnetics of the king's chamber, and the Great Hall apparently has very particular acoustics and very particular resonance pattern that was finely tuned. It's not just like Egyptians putting blocks up. It's tapered at the top and it's stepped, and they've never found any evidence of torches being lit inside the pyramid.
Hmm.
So how did they find their way? They didn't have flashlights, so how
Yeah.
did they light their way through this? There's all kinds of really cool theories, but I'm trying to stick to what the intuitive research has actually revealed. And
Well, so what does the intuitive research say about these 100 years of building it? So I was listening to another um, podcast, and they were, anyway, the argument was it made by humans or was it naturally made? And in my estimation, when I listen to what the intuitive reports are saying, it's both.
hmm,
It's natural as well as human, but there's
natural as in natural forces or
yes,
that they used or what?
yes. I mean, there's nature. I mean, was still part of it. Nature and
Hmm.
then, the elements still contributed, but there's, like in anything, there's
With
more
human
to,
guidance of
that's
it.
right, more to explain as to what that means. So
Yeah.
how was it built? That's the big question. How was
Jeez.
that
Yeah.
pyramid built?
Well, according to the few intuitive reports that we can scrounge up about this, there was a principle of levitation. I guess you'd call it levitation, but it would be a principle of counteracting gravity. Whether either that was a warping of the time-space field magnetically, we don't know because we don't, we're just like barely being able to wrap our heads around levitation. These days, we do have sonic levitation, which you can get from interference waves crashing into each other and creating a 0 point from sonic standing waves. You can levitate a little, like a pencil or a little screw or something. So the principle does exist where you can create a little zone by smashing waves into each other, and you can create a zone of 0 point gravity where things just kind of float. Apparently, from the intuitive reports, they say that they had that technology back then, and that's the technology that was lost. And as you said or intimated, it's a very natural kind of thing. Like you could do that with very primitive tools, very primitive instruments. You could have drums, doing sonic wave interference and create a zone where
Wow,
this
yeah.
warps the gravitational field somehow,
Hmm.
and up the block rises.
Hmm.
Apparently, there were some eyewitness accounts in Tibet of some Tibetan monks doing a similar thing where they were hatching a cave in the Himalayan mountains, and the monks got together and they arranged themselves in a very particular pattern and chanted, and they had instruments as well, and they caused some boulders to rise, huge boulders to rise up, and they moved them with their minds into place.
Hmm.
So we have those eyewitness accounts, very detailed, credible accounts. And that same technology apparently was used to move the blocks into place.
Hmm. Where is that time period of that 100 years? Did that 100 years still occur? Did that 100 years of building the pyramid occur when we had officially moved towards more of the conscious mind being dominant? Or was it right like in the in-between stage where there was a lot more availability to the subconscious mind with a lot greater fluidity?
I think it was at the very tail end of the fourth cycle.
Okay.
That's what it looks like from the timeline. Very
Okay.
tail end of the fourth cycle, meaning that's when very few entities on the planet still had that connection, that interconnection, and therefore still had the ability to use this technology. So the technology was dying out.
Hmm.
It was pretty scarce.
It was
And
dying out because the conscious mind was becoming much more engrossed,
yeah,
right?
because of
And
our connectedness, or lack of connectedness, or we've fooled ourselves into thinking we're not connected.
mhm,
Therefore, we did not have the power and the insight and the technology, just didn't know how to use it
right.
anymore. So somehow the technology depends on our connectedness, our
Mm,
sense of connectedness with the creative source, with the
So this
creative
principle of
powers.
levitation is dependent
It
on,
goes along with our
mhm,
connected sense. Yeah.
yeah.
Which is probably why we haven't discovered it, rediscovered it. So we're going to have some guru who's going to rediscover it. Says, "Oh yes, I'm very connected inside, and see, I can levitate."
Well, I think that's also what's occurring in our time period now is this more of an awakening to that
Hmm.
the inner technology, the inner ecosystem, as I like to
Yeah,
call it.
yeah.
That is,
We've
so
got
it's,
healing technologies, yeah, are coming forth that healing with light, healing with sound, healing with vibration, healing with crystals, healing with
mhm,
oils, all these alternative healing techniques. And I think on the heels of that, there's going to be even more
mhm.
um, just powers that go along with that that have been latent. We knew about them long time ago when we were more connected, more fluent with this energy moving through us.
And I think moving forward, as we humans evolve and deepen our awareness and our understanding of those different types of energetic um, mechanisms and techniques, the intuitive reports will then start revealing more information to
I
us.
think so too.
I
Yeah.
think, do you see that
Yeah.
possibility?
I think so too.
Because we're not, it's kind of like telling a kindergartner,
How to make dynamite or
yeah,
something.
let me teach you as a kindergarten
Yeah.
brain, a little 5-year-old or 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how to do it. And you
Yeah.
just don't have it doesn't mean that you won't eventually maybe have the insight to do that, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. I'm not going to teach my 6-year-old how to uh, magnetically warp the time-space continuum, but
right, right,
maybe later on
right.
we'll
And
we'll
this I
get
think
into
goes
that.
back to that just the earning this information. It's
Yeah.
paying your dues, earning it and earning it. I guess I'm not even just suggesting that it has to be a struggle or
Yeah.
there's only one way to earn it. It's like you've really become responsible with the work you've done to be able to have access to this information at a different point. And that's, I think, within all of us.
Hmm.
I think it's, definitely there within all of us, but that's why it's just not, let me just hand this information out.
Yeah. Here's the keys.
It's not
Go
free.
go take your jet.
So
Yeah.
are you saying then that the 100 years that it took to build, it was not built by little roly-poly levers and
Levers and pulleys and
pulleys and all that kind of
yeah,
good stuff?
and a bunch of slaves or
Do you
even
think?
hired hands.
What do you think about
No.
that? Yeah.
No, I think this technology really was available, and maybe it took 100 years because they weren't as good with the technology anymore. I don't know.
As they used to be, maybe.
Yeah, but the intuitive reports did actually point to this levitation ability. There was somebody who asked on a report, um, so how does this levitation work? They're trying to coax out the technology. So
Hmm.
go ahead and tell me how this levitation thing works. And the reply was something like, it's the same principle that you would use to make iron swim. Like, okay, that doesn't tell me anything. But if you start delving into the physics of that, um, there's this really cool little physics thing you can do with kids even. You can magnetize a needle and you can put it on a piece of like a napkin or a piece of paper or a piece of paper towel. You magnetize this needle, put it on that, and then you place this paper towel on the top of some water. And
Hmm.
the paper towel gets saturated and it sinks and it leaves the needle on the top of the water. And it's partly the surface tension of the water keeps the needle up, but also the magnetics of this magnetized needle will keep it afloat. It won't just go bloop straight down.
Hmm.
So that's part of the principle of stones floating in air.
How did you say it? That there was anomalies in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And within those anomalies in the atmosphere, right, it could be, so in other words, this is where it goes back to what was occurring naturally in the environment.
Hmm.
Those anomalies within the atmosphere were also contributing to aiding the humans
Hmm.
to work with these anomalies.
Yeah. So if the sun was behaving very differently and sending all kinds of interesting things our way towards this planet, and the people of the time knew how to tap into that, maybe collecting it with this crystal and focalizing this energy and using it, um, they could use it for various tools,
Mhm.
like for saws or for drills or for levitation. And then if the atmospheric conditions changed, either the sun or our own atmosphere, because our atmosphere reacts to the sun and whatever the sun is doing, like our magnetic field will enlarge and thicken in essence according to what's being sent our way to this planet.
Mhm.
And if it shrinks, then the magnetics that we have available down here on this planet, that would change quite a bit as well.
Yeah, and this
So
goes
now we're
back to,
linking the sun into this whole business as well. And the sun is part of this evolution of consciousness. It's not just the planet, it's what's being sent our way from. You can think of the sun as mm, kind of like our source, mirrors our source connection or our source energy point, and it emanates all of this energy towards our planet, which would be mirrored in us. There's like a poem in here. Maybe when you and I write our Atlantis book, we'll
yes,
work the sun and the planet and the waters and all of this into some visual images and
I
just
can
do it
see it.
visually.
I
Yeah.
can see it. I can see it now.
Yeah.
No, and only because it's what inspires me as you're telling me, as you're sharing some of this insight. I'm inspired by the endurance of the human's evolution. I mean,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, we had a lot of insight and experience as we trudged through all of the changes of the planets, through all the different cycles. And then we went through this big old loophole of, okay, conscious mind is going to start taking over, ego's going to start, and then you've got, individuals who are going to do everything they can to stay as close to the source as possible.
Hmm.
And then in some lifetimes, we're a little bit more distant, and some other lifetimes we're a little bit more closely related. But it's just this endurance of this energy of, I don't even want to just call us humans, but what else can I say right now?
Yeah.
Just this endurance, this this fortitude of, we're going to keep moving forward and figure it out. And that's where I think we are right now through this
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
It's
That explanation right there shows a couple of things. I think that's how I would describe it as well, that we humans, but even that is explaining or trying to explain our situation as individuals,
Mhm.
like we humans. That still has the picture of these little ants running around on this planet
Yeah.
are wow, we sure are strong, and we sure are creative and resistive and resilient. I still think there's only one of us here.
Yeah. And I think it
I,
goes back to that source, sons of the law of one.
yeah, I
Uh,
think there's just one consciousness.
yeah.
There's just one, and it fractionated in order to explore and experience levels of vibration, and bit by bit these little fractionation things started self-identifying and convincing themselves that they're separate.
I'm going to agree with you. And then I'm also going to say yes, and because I remember actually in a couple of different intuitive reports, it also said that part of that evolution was the individuals. I think that's part of the
Yeah,
evolution is the individual
right.
becoming the, yes, the little sparkle, these little we's.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's within that evolution of those little individual we's kind of evolving into our own opening of, but yet we are all one.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think,
It's
yes,
going to be, it really is both at this point.
yes, that's right.
Yeah. We really are individuals and we really are from the same source and we really are in this physical reality. And it's not just some illusion that we're all going to wake up from, but it kind of is, but it's all of it. It is all of it at this point.
So
And so we have to deal with all of it.
do you think the pyramids, are the pyramids currently serving a role? Like, are they still stabilizers? Or do they serve another role?
Hmm.
And and what do you anticipate is the more to come? Like, what more will be revealed? Like, how important are the pyramids to us? What
I
how
think they're really important still. I don't think they're energetically and physically important. I think the importance is the mystery, the presence of this gigantic mystery on this planet that no one can figure out and that points very dramatically to an ancient kind of source. I think that's really important to keep that obviously right smack in front of us on this planet, keep
Mhm,
pointing towards the source.
mhm,
And even picturesquely, this thing it's pointing out towards Orion. It's pointing straight at Orion's belt. It actually mimics the configuration of Orion. So it's pointing at the stars.
mhm,
It's got this amazing uh, mathematics to it, squaring the circle and pi and phi. And if you get into the mathematics of it, it is just brilliant. And it's so accurate, incredibly accurate, all the way up to the peak. And we don't know how they did it. We still don't know how they did it. And who designed this thing and how did they
mhm.
design this thing? And
And how?
obviously, there was probably 1,000 or 2,000 or more thousand years of technology leading up to the point where they built this thing.
Mhm.
So that I think it's serving a really important function as a mystery that's just staring us right in the face. And it's going to keep on challenging us to search our history, our consciousness and evolution.
I'm excited about the more those individuals that are called to accessing an intuitive report, specifically Atlantis reports
Mhm.
or creative mind reports. Um, I just am excited to hear more information that's going to be
Yeah.
revealed, especially for those individuals who have and are currently doing the work internally and externally in this world. I mean,
Yeah.
I just, I think we are part of the unfolding of the information. And I'm excited to hear what that information is going to tell us, not currently, but also has it's going to help us expand our own minds, but just expand us to imagine what more is open and available to us. So I'm excited about that
Yeah.
because you're right. We do
I
have,
know every time that an intuitive report starts, if we're doing a session and it says we see this one in the Egyptian land area or the Atlantean land area, I really lean in. I go, oh yeah, here we go. This is gonna be good. And invariably it puts a little piece of the puzzle in there. It'll
right,
be a lifetime in Egypt. I think we referred to one report where there was an orphan. She was she was lost from her family and
family.
she kept in contact telepathically with her family. They were never reunited, but she was lost in Egypt at some celebration and the Great Pyramids were already there. And that was way, 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 way back.
Mhm.
So again, we have another piece of the timeline that was put in there, but another piece of the connectedness that was associated with that time period as well,
Mhm.
that inner connectedness. So Yeah,
Yes, sir.
every time we get another report, there's another little piece. And if we can broadcast these little pieces out there more and more, little bit by little bit, people start um, directing their attention inward,
Yeah.
maybe, and
Yeah.
contemplating that mystery.
Our origins are, we'll start, we're just creating not another, we're just creating history. That's not even right to say.
Maybe revealing the
We're
timeline.
revealing these timelines that will add, add more to what we currently believe and what we hopefully need to reimagine or
Yeah,
to re-examine. Maybe that's a
yeah,
better word of what our origins are.
yeah.
And that's
The-
what for me is exciting.
my daughter is she's studying anthropology. My wife studied anthropology, and my daughter's also looking into the archaeology program at university as well. And I love it. So she's had these stories in her ears for forever
Right.
from me. And then she's adding the anthropological timeline that they say and that they've established for humans and human distribution on the planet and cultural rise and fall of cultures around the planet. So she's building both of these perspectives.
Which is
She's got
needed.
at the same time, which is really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that next generation can take intuitive research perspective and the physical anthropology and archaeology perspective and new technologies and combine all of it in just a really cool way and add to
Mm-hmm.
that perspective of our timeline of evolution.
Paul, do you think in our next pyramid episode we need to continue talking about the Sphinx, expand upon that?
Oh, we didn't even talk about the
We didn't
Sphinx
talk
at
about
all.
that. And
Yeah.
the other larger um, pyramid structures and or ancient structures.
Yeah. Monolithic structures. Right.
And also talk about the migration of people to the different lands and different groups that were seeded by different entities,
Hmm. I think
different
we have
planets,
another episode that we have
right?
to do there. Yeah.
Don't you think those are all other things that we can kind of help maybe do some more
Yeah,
sewing
I
together of
can
this?
hear our fans clamoring right now. They're shouting for, yeah, what about the people?
What about the people?
What
What was
about
going
them?
on? What was it
Yeah.
like?
Okay.
Um, I think a next episode for sure to continue our pyramid discussion is going to take place, but
Hmm.
you blew my mind on source, clarifying that a little bit more as much as we can. Sons of the Law of One, the
Yeah.
Sons of Belial. What does that mean? Um, what are we talking about when we're talking about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind and the entrapment or the
Yeah.
separation and awakening to moving back into the world of the source,
Hmm. Including it all,
including
individuality
it all,
and
individuality.
connectedness.
That's
Right.
right. I think all of those I think are wrapped up in this story of the pyramids.
Hmm.
Right?
All right. To be continued, I
To be
guess.
continued.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Once Upon a Quantum Leap is for your reference only. This podcast and the material is intended solely as educational information and should not be used for diagnosis or treatment of any health problem, financial, or legal advice.
You can listen to full episodes and find out about Paul and Capucine at onceuponaquantumleap.com. All reports shared on this show have been released with permission, and identifiers have been removed for individuals' privacy.
The intuitive reports referred to in each episode are available on our website, on the podcast page, and through links in our show notes. We encourage you to listen to those for greater context.
If you're interested in obtaining your own intuitive report, go to quantuminsight.co. That's quantuminsight.co. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.